What up, comrades? The unique love story of Prakashvati and Yashpal. I never even saw Yashpal in her first meeting with him. Premarital sexual liaison, which culminated into marriage much later, and all hell broke loose. Harivansh Rai Bachchan. Yes, Amitabh Bachchan's father, the same person. Love in itself is a form of Inquilab. This would be the start of a bashful romance. Are we allowed to say that in this country? By jumping onto a neighbor's roof, Prakashvati would be killed too. Since they were bhabijis, many Twitter handles jesting that they will give their husbands permission to work post-marriage. Prakashvati really did it. That women were the root of all dissension. 75 years of Indian independence. It was love at many of you sides. Hello and welcome to the 14th episode of Eyeshadow Etihaas. I am Ruchika Sharma, and before I say anything else, let me wish you a very happy Independence Day. 75 years of Indian independence. Can't tell you how proud I am to belong to this nation. Especially considering it has such a rich and varied history that I love reading about and talking about, not just in the classroom, but also here on YouTube. The more I explore about the subcontinent's history, the more and more I fall in love with it. And I would also like to take a few seconds and thank everyone for more than 500 subscribers. I had posted a community page poll talking about whether you would like music in this particular video or not. And unfortunately, I got a bit of a hung assembly. As you can see the results over here, but they were still tilted towards no music. So I've kept it no music. But in case you do want to have music in the videos of Eyeshadow and Etihaas, please go ahead and vote in this particular community page. And if the balance tilts in the favor of having music, I will add some in the next episode onwards. And as I said, I am Ruchika Sharma. I teach history for a living, and I do have a few more credentials that have been listed in the description box. Also in the description box are a list of sources that you can use to read about whatever today's topic is in case it sparks your curiosity, or you could use these sources to fact check everything that I will be blabbering in this particular video. And if you've hopped on to the channel for the first time, this is Eyeshadow and Etihaas. It's a passion project where I bring together my love for applying eyeshadows, which is this stuff right here, and my love for history, for Etihaas. Now that all that is sorted, I cannot wait to introduce you to today's topic. Today's topic will, of course, be touching upon a very important theme of the 75 years of Indian independence, the national movement. And as part of Tarikh-e-Ishq, today we will talk about the unique love story of Prakashvati and Yashpal, a young couple who were not only in love with each other, but also deeply in love with Inquilab or revolution. And in both sense, they rankled with the society. Theirs was a premarital sexual liaison which culminated into marriage much later. In between, there was Inquilab. As dedicated workers for the HSRA, the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, their love story was often considered as antithetical to the celibate and tough lives of Inquilabis. If only the world knew, love in itself is a form of Inquilab. And while I talk about this Inquilabi love story, I will be putting together this brick red, ochre red eyeshadow eye look using quite a bit of eyeshadow palettes because I just couldn't find the correct color. So I'll just be taking a picture of these and putting it on the community tab. You can go ahead and check out all the products that I've used in creating this particular look in my community tab. Just click on the community tab and you'll have that post ready. Chale phir. Now for Prakashvati a 17-year-old Lahori girl, the taste for Inquilab was courtesy other female revolutionaries. Most notably, Manmohini Zuchi, who was a fierce Congress worker at the forefront of organizing pickets to protest Bhagat Singh's death sentence and enrolled as a volunteer for the Congress. Kapoor was still within the confines of familial acceptance of how much a woman could contribute to the freedom movement. Meanwhile, the second character of our story, Yashpal, also had his first brush with the national movement at age 17, where he furthered Gandhian politics. But his meeting with thought-provoking minds such as Bhagat Singh at the National College at Lahore led him to the HSRA, or the Hindustan Republican Socialist Association. And it is to the HSRA that Prakashvati was eventually introduced to via Premvati, who was a widowed cousin of Yashpal and a teacher to Prakashvati. Additionally, Premvati, via her teaching, would also attract a lot of her female pupils to the HSRA's cause, along with raising funds for the association. And this is how Prakashvati initially started contributing to the HSRA, albeit hidden from her family, where post Bhagat Singh's arrest, when the organization needed money, Prakashvati would often steal from her mother and send the money to the association. Her hefty contribution of her gold chain and later on a full 1,000 rupees brought her the notice that the revolutionaries wanted women to work with them. And these were no small orders. These were quite important orders from stalwarts like Chandrasekhar Azad himself, who were of the opinion that girls made for a good cover for revolutionary activities and made it easier to find a base, a shelter for such activities. The zealous Prakashvati agreed in no time and had a brief meeting with Yashpal, where Ania Loomba tells us that Prakash was so nervous she didn't even look up once and never even saw Yashpal in her first meeting with him. This would be the start of a bashful romance between Prakashvati and Yashpal, but one that would rock HSRA's firm ethos and lay bare an interesting idea of love, centered around revolution, but was still governed and censured by conservative ideas of the society. Anyway, Prakashvati's ardent support for the association was going quite well until her family, like most families of 18-year-old women at that point of time, announced her marriage. Prakashvati then wrote a letter to Yashpal telling him about this and how she wanted to leave her parental home and join the HSRA full-time instead. However, as fate would have it, Yashpal's response to Prakashvati, filled with assurances that the party would try and make a necessary arrangement, was intercepted by Prakashvati's brother, and all hell broke loose. Prakashvati then left home by jumping onto a neighbor's roof and arrived at one of HSRA's many houses. For Yashpal, this was a bit of a quandary. As much as women were welcomed in the revolutionary organizations, unmarried women such as Prakashvati were not really those who came to the houses of revolutionaries. Women married to revolutionaries were a different ballgame altogether, since they were bhabijis, a socially more acceptable relationship. So for Yashpal, a runaway Prakashvati, unmarried and pretty, posed a problem. The only logical solution for Yashpal was to counsel Prakashvati that the HSRA was a political party and did not really take up the cause of women resisting unwanted marriages at home. She was therefore advised to get back home. However, Prakashvati was pretty gutsy and was therefore adamant and refused to go back home. She spat back that it was the revolutionaries who had taught her the meaning of her personal freedom. Having pointed out such a hypocrisy in the attitudes of the revolutionaries, Prakashvati seems to have touched a nerve with Yashpal, who immediately went back on his words saying, "If you've left home to work for the party, then you're more than welcome here." Yashpal's subsequent apology at having handled this situation with complete insensitivity made Prakashvati burst into tears. Loomba tells us that touched, Yashpal would describe Prakashvati as his weakness. A very male revolutionary way of admitting to falling in love. You see, as much as the revolutionaries were quite forward thinking in terms of their politics, when it came to their social ethos, they were at par with most others in the subcontinent. In fact, romance was said to pose a danger to the revolutionary movement, corrupting the minds of young men. A true revolutionary was supposed to be a celibate and only take Inquilab for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. In that sense, Prakashvati was Yashpal's weakness. He had let love in, and it was to bring many a storm. And once inducted into the party, Prakashvati was sent to a rented house of the party in Kila Gujjar Singh, which is a locality in Lahore. She was given an underground name as well, Kamala and or Sarala. You see, since a lot of such details about underground revolutionary activities rely only on oral accounts, exact details of such stuff are a little difficult to get. So, at Kila Gujjar Singh, Prakash was to learn how to interact with other revolutionaries. Yet, this wasn't exactly an easy task for an unmarried woman. Prakash soon had offensive encounters with her housemates, most of which were men, and wrote to be shifted to wherever Yashpal was. And when the bhabis of the party suggested marriage to Yashpal with Prakashvati, he greatly overreacted. Perhaps he was eager to demonstrate his love for revolution was unwavering. And when Prakash refused to be undeterred by the dangerous conditions in which Yashpal, an ace bomb manufacturer for the party, lived in, she came to live with him. This would soon lead them to confess their feelings for each other, and Prakash in her memoirs would describe this as love at first sight. Although technically, it was love at many a few sights, considering at first sight she hadn't even seen Yashpal. Yet, the bond between Prakashvati and Yashpal was always revolution. When leaving Prakashvati at a safe house in Delhi, Yashpal, who was going to storm the jail where Bhagat Singh was lodged, warned Prakashvati that Yashpal was likely to perish and that they may never meet again. To this, Prakashvati assured him that she will also soon join him in death. And despite very clear ideas as to how, for the couple, the nation always came first, to the other members of the party, the sexual explicitness of the relationship between Yashpal and Prakashvati outside the bonds of marriage was a deterrent for Inquilab. Prakashvati recounts how she was referred to as Amazon by Sukhdev Raj, another member of the party that had vulture-like eyes for her. For Yashpal, his commitment to the cause was always questioned. It was wondered if Yashpal had recruited Prakashvati to the party for his love for her and not really for the revolution. Accordingly, while Yashpal, Prakashvati and a few others operated a bomb factory in Delhi under the guise of a soap manufacturing unit, In Kanpur, the Central Committee of the party, HSRA, condemned Yashpal as a coward who might betray the party. So, it was decided that he would be shot and later Prakashvati would be killed too. And having heard about such a draconian decision of the party, Yashpal went into hiding, which led Chandrasekhar Azad to look for him at the house he shared with Prakashvati, whereupon being inquired what was the nature of her relationship with Yashpal, Prakash replied, "It was as it should be." Furious when Azad did locate Yashpal in Kanpur, he asked him the same question, to which Yashpal replied that they were man and wife. Azad, for all his gutsy revolutionary deeds, we are told, believed that women were the root of all dissensions. Yet, Azad seems to have mellowed down when Yashpal assured him for his unwavering faith for the cause. The decision to kill Yashpal was rescinded, and after Azad's death, it was Yashpal who became the party's commander-in-chief. And as the commander-in-chief of the HSRA, Yashpal would soon be arrested since the party was involved in an attempt to kill Lord Irwin and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. And Yashpal here would write to Prakashvati that he frees her from all their vows. But Prakash would petition the jail authorities to let them be married. And accordingly, Prakashvati's and Yashpal's was the first ever marriage to take place in a prison. In fact, the outcry at this was so huge that the law was later amended to disallow such marriages in prison. And while waiting for her husband to be released from prison, Prakashvati would come in contact with the famous poet Harivansh Rai Bachchan. Yes, Amitabh Bachchan's father, the same person. And Harivansh Rai Bachchan would go on to describe Prakashvati famously as femme fatale and infamously as a seductress. One wonders if it was her boldness in having a premarital sexual affair with Yashpal that colored Bachchan's judgments about her. Quite likely, since a premarital sexual affair was virtually unheard of at that particular point of time. So Prakashvati, or Prakasho as she was fondly called, was a clear outlier. But for the British, Prakasho, her underground name now changed to Rani, was hunted by the police for her involvement in revolutionary activities and was arrested and released on the condition that she leaves Delhi, which she eventually did. And upon realizing that post Yashpal's release, Prakasho and Yashpal would need to find an alternate source of income, Prakasho started to learn dentistry and would soon start working as a dentist. However, even after Yashpal's release, the duo kept working for revolution by starting a progressive publishing house and a printing press in Lucknow. And fundraising for most of these ventures was largely courtesy Prakasho's efforts. And as she would pen famously in her memoirs, I gave Yashpalji freedom to pursue his literary activities. Many Twitter handles jesting that they will give their husbands permission to work post-marriage. Prakashvati Kapoor really did it. Prakasho and Yashpal's relationship was a misfit in every sense of the term. Prakasho's spirit of revolution and her deep sense of understanding the essence of freedom often challenged and shaped the narrow definitions of both these terms for Yashpal. And as a woman, one can only imagine how much more difficult it would have been for Prakasho in the 20th century milieu to straddle the dangerous yet exciting worlds of militant revolution and premarital love liaison with a man. And while the common ground for Prakasho and Yashpal was their love for revolution, it was also their undying love for each other that helped them both maneuver such tumultuous waters. And that is all that I have for you today. Please note that there is a list of sources listed in the description box that you can go ahead and check out if Prakasho and Yashpal's story made you curious about them, or if you just wanted to fact check everything that I blabbered over here. And before you just walk away, please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel, and do hop on into the comment section to let me know what is it exactly that you would like me to talk about in the next episode of Eyeshadow and Etihaas. And do check out the community page, because that is where I'll be listing all the products that I used to create this particular look today.